I welcome you all to the 5th edition of Global Conference on Cybersecurity, Cyberspace. MyGov, on behalf of Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, is holding this parallel session. The subject which is flashed on the screen is cyber behavior, evolving best practices for netizens. In this digital era, people are becoming increasingly focused on using technology as a mechanism for peer socialization, and governments are exploring cyberspace to tap the potential pool of intelligence towards participatory governance. A behavioral pattern to misuse and abuse through exploiting technology is an emerging concern in our society. Hence, the study of human mind becomes more important to understand the human cyber behavior in the cyberspace. In this session, our experts will share their thoughts and insights and deliberate on individual social and technical factors on cyber behavior. The digital age beckons us to usher in a new era of character education aimed directly at addressing the opportunities and challenges of living a digital life, inclusive of behavior, ethics, and other confounding issues. In a world where the child learns to use a gadget before learning how to hold a pencil, it becomes crucial to not only use technology to our best advantage, but also implicitly monitor its usage objectively. Without further ado, I would like to call upon the moderator and the speakers. I shall briefly introduce them and request them to come to the dais and take the place. Starting first with Mr. Sanjay Bavisi, Chief Executive Officer, ECCouncil International. Jay Bavisi, Jay as he is called, is the award-winning founder and president of ECCouncil Group, a global leader in cybersecurity education, training, publishing, events, and holds certifications such as Certified Ethical Hacker, Computer Hacking Forensic Investigator, Secure Analyst, and Licensed Penetration Tester programs. He was the chairman of the Hackers Panel of InfoSecurity Europe, opening keynote for InfoSecurity Mexico 2016, the closing note keynote speaker for IT Web Security Summit in South Africa, and as it goes, he is the best person placed to moderate today's session. I don't think the slides will ever be able to do justice to all the achievements of each and every panelist over here. So everything can be read from the slides, and I shall not speak everything out. You can always Google and always interact with the person who's present over here. May I request you to the stage, sir? Introducing the speakers, I'll start with Jeanne Holmes. Ms. Jeanne Holmes is Deputy CIO and Assistant General Manager, City of Los Angeles. She is joining us on VC from all the way from US. As a leader in open data, education, community building, and civic invocation, Jeanne Holmes empowers people to discover new knowledge and collaborate to improve life on Earth and beyond. Jeanne is the Deputy CIO and Senior Technology Advisor to the Mayor for the City of Los Angeles, bringing technical innovations to 4 million people. Dr. Dorit. Next one, please. Dr. Dorit is Vice President, Checkpoint Software Technologies, manages all product definition and development functions for both the enterprise and consumer divisions of the company. Her core responsibilities include leading the company's product management, research and development, and quality assurance initiatives from concept to delivery. In 1993, she won the Israel National Defense Prize. Mr. Richard David Spearman. He is the director of Vodafone. Richard Spearman joined Vodafone as Group Corporate Security Director in March 2015. Has responsibility for security across Vodafone's global operation, and his role gives him a unique insight into the threats, challenges, and opportunities posed by developments in technology, public policy, changing legal frameworks, and shifting societal attitudes. Richard has a vast experience and has lived in almost each and every continent. Mrs. Gupta, Director of Facebook. This is the platform on which maximum of us devote maximum of our time. Productive time, sir. Aanchal Gupta is Director of Security at Facebook. All the glitches. She leads a global team responsible for assessing and mitigating security risks across Facebook. Her team provides long-term security guidance to Facebook, diverse product offerings including Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, Oculus, and WhatsApp. In addition, Anchal's team is responsible for ensuring the security of Facebook's corporate infrastructure, defining security policy, red team exercises, vendor security reviews, and ensuring compliances. She is passionate about building diverse teams and has served on the review committee for the Grace Hopper Conference. Dr. C. Mohan, IBM Fellow, IBM Almaden Research Center. As you will see, this gentleman has got 50 patents more to his name. Dr. C. Mohan has been an IBM researcher for 36 years in the database area, impacting numerous IBM and non-IBM products, research and academic communities and standards, especially with his invention of the Aries family of database locking and recovering algorithms and the presumed abort commit protocol. His list of achievements will not cover the entire day, so please, you can definitely connect with him. Since 2016, he has been a distinguished visiting professor of China's prestigious Tsinghua University. He has served on the advisory board of IEEE Spectrum and on numerous conferences and journal boards. Sir. And that will be Mr. Arvind Gupta, founder, Digital India Foundation. He's rushing from another meeting. Arvind Gupta currently heads the Digital India Foundation, which works on digital inclusion, internet governance, and smart cities. He also leads BJP's Information and Technology team. He spearheads the digital and social media campaign for Prime Minister Modi during elections 2014, for which he was awarded the Digital Leader of the Year and Pathbreaker Award, and has been covered in leading PR trade publications including Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Gartner, PR Week. He holds a BTech in Electronics Engineering from IIT BHU and a Master's in Business and Computer Science from University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I shall now hand over the stage and the mic to the moderator and will request you to please commence with the panel discussion. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Karthik. Good afternoon, everyone. All right. Before we start the session, we have to do a little bit of cyber hygiene. So I want to know how many of you have a left hand. Can you raise your hand, please? Okay. How many of you have a right hand? All right, good. So the reason why I ask this question is because I want to make sure that when I ask a question to the audience, and the idea is to have a complete engaged session, you are able to use either one of your hands and actually participate in the poll that we are going to be raising. There was a conference when I asked questions and no one answered, and then I realized that probably nobody wanted to use any one of their hands to vote on anything. So the topic is cyber behavior, evolving its best practices for Netizen. So let me put this in context. The team of panelists had actually had an elaborate discussion, and we wanted to ensure that we put it in perspective that when we say netizens, we are talking of two large groups of people. We're talking about citizens that are using technology for enablement of various functions of their daily lives, but it also involves the technological community that's actually building these various applications that the netizens are actually going to be using to attain what they're trying to get to. If you read the synopsis of the entire topic of discussion, for which I have a bunch of very eloquent speakers available here, including Professor Jeanne Holm from UCLA in California. What we're trying to discuss is the connection between cyber psychology and cyber behavior in the context of digitization. So every country in the world is trying to move to a digital world. if you would have heard Prime Minister Modi's speech, he talked about the Umang application that India is going to be developing and launching, which is going to bring tremendous amount of benefit to citizens of India in getting various services through an electronic means. But the question really is, what is an acceptable use and what is an unacceptable use of technology? And how do we actually ensure that we are able to sanitize an entire nation towards cyber hygiene to ensure the use of technology does not bring along the risks that are actually created by technology itself. And just a fact in point is that I'm sure most of you would have known that in the year 2021, now according to a recent research, the cost of cybercrime is going to hit it's going to hit $6 trillion US. Okay? Now, to most of you that are sitting in this room, you belong to the cyber world, you would say, yeah, okay, Jay, $6 trillion doesn't look like a big number. It's another piece of data. So what? Well, if you take a look at the number, $6 trillion, and you put that in context of the revenue of some of the Fortune 50 companies, if you were to look at the revenue of Apple, you were to look at the revenue of Google, and you were to look at the revenue of Microsoft. And if you were to combine all of these three companies' annual revenue, and you multiply that by 15 times, that's your $6 trillion. So what I'm trying to impress upon you is that this is a serious issue that requires a thorough debate and discussion and implementation by various stakeholders, because $6 trillion is going to be what the cyber crime economy is going to look like. And unless we, the citizens on the right side, are going to be able to do preventative measures and take corrective actions, we're not going to be able to reverse this tide. And for that, I am joined by a very eloquent team of panelists. I wanted to start by Jeanne Holm, since she's furthest away. The rest of us are right here in New Delhi. Jeanne, are you able to hear us loud and clear?
So okay. Thank you so much for including me virtually today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeanne. And on behalf of all of the panelists, we would like to welcome you to this session. Jeanne, you know, as the Chief Technology Officer of City of Los Angeles, can you share a little bit, what is your perspective as when we talk of cyber hygiene and we talk of governments? By this, I'm talking about city councils, I'm talking about state bodies and federal, as in the US, and we look at netizens. What do you think is the role and responsibility of a netizen as opposed to a government? Whose responsibility would it be to ensure that there's cyber hygiene?
Well, I think it's a shared responsibility. So certainly the bulk of the responsibility falls on a person to have that sort of good behavior. But if they don't have the ability to connect online, to have something to access, and to have digital literacy, then we're trying to make them come into an environment and provide citizen services that they're not really trained and prepared for. So I think it's important for the government to think about those three aspects: connectivity, access, and digital literacy, and provide either through public-private partnerships with local universities or with schools or with community centers, ways for citizens to start to learn those skills and to be able to understand and to be able to come online in a safe way, whether that's interacting with their government or other kind of online interactions. But then I think it's also important for the citizen, when they come online, to take that responsibility as well. And there's ways to do this from, like in Los Angeles, we donate computers that have been refurbished to our citizens who are low income or have trouble connecting. And we provide a large variety of free Wi-Fi hotspots around the city for people to be able to get online.
Thank you, Jeanne. So that brings me to a question. We talked about public-private partnership, but you know, I'm pretty sure that it's very obvious that if you look at the education system across the world, if you look at K through 12 education, cybersecurity is still a program that is not made mandatory. So we are providing children from a very early on age, as what Karthik had mentioned when he introduced all of us. We are teaching them how to use an electronic device before they're able to use a pencil. But yet we're not teaching them from a mandatory standpoint of what cyber safety is all about. I wanted to turn this to Arvind, who is very famous, has done amazing work in the area of digital, especially in India. Arvind, would you care to share some thoughts as to how can we bring in a best practice to change this concept and making sure that we are able to make a cyber hygiene as part of a behavior in a nation?
Thank you. Yeah, I think you actually started that discussion that I wanted to bring into the fold, is that India is leapfrogging, right? We are basically a mobile first cyber country. We've gone from, we have really leapfrogged the desktop. Now, when that happens, digital literacy, e-literacy has come before, in many cases, or digital usage or e-usage has come, not literacy, before your alphabetic usage. Now, when that happens, the session really is, how do we make it easier for netizens to operate? We have made it so complex. Cyber security, the terms of service, what they're agreeing to do, what they're not agreeing to do, it's become so complex that most of the netizens, if you poll, will find it very difficult to understand what is that you're trying to communicate to them. Number one. Number two, countries like India, 22 official languages, right? How many languages do we communicate in? 86% of Indians don't communicate or consume content in a language other than English. Or consume content in a language other than English, 86% of Indians. So, and our whole behavior, our whole technology, our whole digitization effort is mostly around English language. So there is a dichotomy here, and to make it easier, we have to make it in local languages, in languages that consumers understand. The content has to be local. Two, there has to be the digital literacy, as you talked about, and the CIO from the city of Los Angeles talked about, has to be very integrated. There is a portion, the kids going to school probably pick it up faster, and the schools are now embedding into their education. But the people who have, the students who have just come out of schooling system and are have missed that during the school years are a very vulnerable lot. The other point I do want to bring into focus is, I think given the prevalence of the mobile phone in a country like India, and a lot of these bundled applications that go into these phones, they cause unknowingly, unintendedly, so much of cyber theft, data theft, the consumers don't even know about. So I think the basic point I'm making is the issue of literacy, it's the issue of language, it's the issue of content, and understanding that India is a mobile first country, and for that aspect, you have to make it very simple. And because we make our technology, our terms of service, our understanding of that so complex, it gets little acceptability.
Thank you, thank you. So that brings me to a point to engage the audience. Let me ask you guys a question. How many of you are using Wi-Fi? Part of the conference, you are provided with Wi-Fi. Okay, and the rest of you are not connected to the internet? Okay, all right, good. How many of you are using VPN? Well, I am for sure, right? So you can see, you can look around, right? We are trusting that, okay, we have Wi-Fi and that's fine. I had a friend of mine, a close friend of mine was doing e-banking on a Wi-Fi in a hotel network. And I said, what are you doing, man? He says, I'm just doing e-banking as my phone is safe. But the knowledge that we're talking about is what hackers are looking at, or what they are trying to get after. This is something that we as a community have not been able to impart onto the common citizens. So I want to turn now to Achal from Facebook. Achal, to what Arvind has said, language, right? 82% of Indians speak in a language other than English. But I know that Facebook has made a lot of innovation with multiple languages, right? Can you share some of the innovations that Facebook has been doing in responsible computing, in making sure that its users are embracing security as a lifestyle?
No, I think we have more than 2 billion users on our platform, and we want to make our platform safe and secure for everyone. And to do that, as I think Jeanne mentioned, it is a shared responsibility. So we focus on 3 key areas. One is what can we do as Facebook to make our platform secure? Second is what can we enable our users to do so they are safe on our platform? And third is how can we make our overall security community strong? So for the first one, what can we do to make Facebook secure? We have best-in-class security team, and they are working round the clock. They are building tools which are running millions of times behind the scene. And beyond that, for our users, because this is the topic of what our users should be doing, we create some easy-to-use tools for our users to use. And I'll give you some examples, like two-factor auth. They can use on our platform to add an extra layer of security to their account. And a lot of times we hear from people, oh, two-factor auth is going to complicate my usage of the platform because I'll have to add this additional authentication mechanism every time. And that's not true. You can set up a two-factor auth on your account and you only have to use it once from your device. And then we remember that this is the device you always use. After that, we don't prompt you for second factor. But yes, if somebody is trying to hack into your account, that person will be prompted. And hence, your account is protected. So I think in the end, we have to do more user education. We have other things like login alerts. Login alerts is a system. If you enable it, we will alert you saying we saw something suspicious, some suspicious attempts to your account. And if you say, no, it wasn't me, then we definitely ask for second factor when you're logging in. So doing some of these things really help. We do make sure that our security community is stronger. So the tools that we build internally, we try to open source them because we believe in the fact that the stronger the security community is, the better we will be at fighting this war. So some of the tools like bug bounty, or bug bounty is not actually a tool, but it's a program, or threat exchange, which I can maybe talk about later. Those are some things that we do. And again, if you are into security space, I encourage that you should open source some of the things that you internally build, because we need to make our community stronger too.
Thank you. So I want to ask the audience another question once again. Do we have a volunteer amongst any one of you that's prepared to give us, by the way, ECCouncil creates a lot of hackers, as you know, ethical hackers. Would you trust me with your cell phone unlocked and give me complete rights to take a look at your contacts, look at your messages, look at your location occasionally? Would there be a volunteer at all? One volunteer. Right? You probably have an old Nokia phone, right, without any application. Then, sir, I have no use of that too. Even I need to use Mohan to help me with an IBM Research Center. So the point I'm trying to make is that we would never do that. In fact, we'd say, oh, how can we do that? It's a matter of privacy. It's my right. But at the same time, we download apps all the time, and what do we say? Accept, accept, accept. We don't read any rules. We never investigate if they're going to monitor our location. We never investigate if they're going to take a look at our contacts. We never object to the fact that they're going to be contacting our communications, right? And so that's part of the cyber hygiene mentality that we're talking about. Now, with 1.2 billion Indians, and I'm not just talking from an Indian perspective, but India is going to have 1.2 billion mobile users, as we heard yesterday from Prime Minister Modi's speech. India is going to have to deal with this because the normal citizens will have to understand the repercussions of using mobility in daily life. I want to turn on to Dorit now from Checkpoint. And Dorit, you've been a veteran in this industry in cybersecurity. Share with us 20 years of cybersecurity in a snapshot. How has the evolution taken place, and what are the implications that you see?
Hi, so I've been at Checkpoint 22 years, and I managed the R&D across these 22 years. And I think it's been like an amazing trip. And if we look back, then I think 20 years ago we were much more naive. There were pretty much two types of controls in the world, firewall and antiviruses. And we assumed we are unlikely to get hacked. Along the years, I think three main trends occurred. One is the move of IT to modern tools. like mobile, and I'll get back to this in a second. And along with this, the move of IT to infrastructures such as cloud, and both of them together, meaning connectivity is more important than anything, and I cannot stay offline even 1 second. And the third trend is of threat prevention sophistication or cyber sophistication. So people realized that it's just more simple to use the cyber as a platform for bad things than to use the physical world. So a thief, why do you have to burgle to a house if you could just use the internet? If it's a country that want to conduct a war, why send tanks and troops? It's safer to do this through the internet. Or if it's a bunch of protests, it's much harder to get them to the streets than just to vote with a pajama from bed. So the world developed as the cyber as a place to put all the things in, and on top of this, state nations develop very sophisticated tool that if you look at a state developing a nuclear weapon, you cannot easily replicate it. But if you look at a nation developing cyber tool and it leaks the day after due to WikiLeaks or other favorite leaking mechanism, then the day after it could be used against any of you. So I've seen the same transition going through Check Point, addressing the cyber threats, but targeting to make us all secure, specifically in cloud and mobile. And mobile has been a great target for us, where we take very sophisticated rules like a zero-day, machine learning, and other tools to protect enterprises, to protect countries, but then to make them simple enough for consumers to use. I think that sometimes the consumers just feel cozy and safe by using them, and that's false sense of security. So my point is, I think these attacks can be prevented, but it takes a journey to understand that the attacks exist. And I've seen the journey and the awareness coming across the world in a very significant way in the last 20 years.
Thank you, Dorit. That's true. I tend to agree, right? We had an old postal system. I knew when I grew up, I used to, when I want to send a letter, I had to go to a post office, put in a stamp. But then we invented the email to replace the old system. We used to stand in lines in banks. We invented e-banking. We used to stand in line in public phone booths. To those of you who know what's a public phone booth, you're old enough, just like me. And to those of you who do not, it's okay, you're very young. And we invited VoIP. And after having all the services in electronic form, we then realized, oops, we forgot security. And now we are backpedaling as a community and figuring out how can we strengthen and secure. And to be fair, the community has made a lot of innovations. We have got regulations that have come up. We have got technology solutions that have come up. We have got people that we've been developing as far as capacity development is concerned, but we still have a $6 trillion problem. I want to jump over to my friend Richard from Vodafone, and I'd love to hear from you. Richard, let's talk a little bit from a corporate strategy. You represent corporate security at Vodafone in London. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to customer security? Because Vodafone has a lot of data from a lot of customers from a lot of countries. What's your philosophy for security?
Thanks, Jay. I think there's been some very interesting contributions already. It's a very fascinating subject, and there's lots of different areas we could explore. I mean, from my perspective, I'd start from just making clear why I think it is that service providers, and I don't just mean telcos, I also mean big cloud providers and others now find themselves in a really unique and very, very central position in terms of cyber defense. So essentially, to cartoon it really, in the old days we used to do mobile phones, and the worst thing that could happen, and it could be pretty bad, was that you couldn't make a phone call for a while. And what's happened now, as Dorit was explaining, is that obviously as we centralize our lives around these devices and that connectivity, the richness of that data increases, and therefore its attractiveness as a target to people who want to do bad things with it grows. And so Vodafone sits in the middle. We have customers, we have consumers, we have people that we want to sell services to and do sell services to, who we need to educate, who we need to make sure understand the risks that go with those services and understand the steps they can take to make sure that they use them safely and securely. But we also hold lots of other people's data that moves across our network. And so in some of the cyber incidents that we see, it's about our network being attacked not for Vodafone, but for access to our customers. So it's a complex, multi-layered problem that we're dealing with here. So from a security point of view in Vodafone, we organize ourselves in a slightly unusual way, I think. So we've got a corporate security function, which I head. And we've also got a technology security function, which focuses on the controls and the technologies we use and leads on cyber defense. But what we've done is to bring together our security strategy so that the two of us that lead those functions, Emma Smith is my equivalent in the technology security space, work off a single strategy. And in that strategy, we've got 5 pillars, one of which is customer security. So one of the 5 things that are our must-dos every year is everything we're doing, all of the programs that we're running, contributing to it, is to improve customer security. So that's very central to us. And that's about the education, some of which has already been spoken about, the sorts of the passwords, authentication, antivirus, prompting people to update their software, making sure they're updating their software when they're using their devices. All of those things help make our customers secure. That's one pillar. Another pillar we've got is about what we call security basics, which is around making sure that Vodafone's difficult to get into, that we control the movement around it. So we've got big networks, big IT infrastructures. How do we make sure that our own people are moving in and around it, and the data is moving in and around it in a controlled and sensible way? And also, how do we stop stuff escaping from it? So it's making it hard to get into, hard to move around, and hard to take stuff out of. The other pillars are about risk, people, and culture, and I really want to talk about culture. Others have already mentioned the point about partnerships and about companies can do some of it, governments can do some of it, but also citizens, netizens, and customers need to do something as well, need to be part of it. And part of that is about equipping them with the tools. As was said earlier, we need to educate our kids to make sure they understand it. My children certainly understand it better than I do. We need to educate our users, but we also need to explain the risks. And I think one of the things that is a difficult balance to strike is between us actually saying to a customer, it's all good here, security is my responsibility, it's done, don't worry, which in some ways is a commercial proposition that's easier to sell. My view is that as and precisely because we're moving into a world which we're doing more and more online, and some of the things that we're confiding to our online data space or actually using online, as we're getting more, those things are getting more intrusive, more personal, it's really important that everyone who's using those services doesn't just go allow, and understands the risks that come with those services. I have a personal belief that Internet of Things, one of the revolutionary things I think about Internet of Things could be its development in health. And the use of IoT functionality for health benefits, I think, is going to be huge in the years going forward. But imagine how that would be set back by a lack of confidence. And so that I think I'm not going to go on, I could go on for a long time, I won't here, but I do think the final point I'd make is that we have to make sure that we build a security infrastructure and architecture that's transparent so users can see it, that's easy at different levels for people to access it and use it appropriately, and also that what maintains the confidence of the users, because ultimately confidence in the internet, confidence in the security of the products and services that are being provided to you via that means is absolutely crucial to the security and development of the digital economy. So there's a profound relationship. I would say it, I'm a security guy, security is really important, but for me security is really important because ultimately the confidence of users is critical to the growth of the digital economy, and it's our job to make sure they can feel that way. The only other thing I'll mention on the security strategy, so there's risk, people, and culture, getting the internal culture right and sharing it with the people outside. There's our cyber defense piece, which we'll probably come back to later. The last piece of the 5 pillars is about future focus. And I think it's all really important that we don't get too locked up in what we're doing today. We also are looking at where we want to get to, and we're choosing a sensible speed of approach to get there. Because I already feel sometimes that the technology would allow us to do things that I wouldn't recommend you do. And so my job in a way is about closing that delta between the fantastic potential of what could be done using internet services and the security and safety of doing it. And I think, you know, when people are confidently getting into driverless cars, closing the doors, saying they want to go to their grandmother's house and disappearing off down the street, I'll know that the confidence factor is high enough. I think we're still a long way from that, and we all know it, so there's a lot of work still to do.
Thank you, Richard. I want to turn the table the other way around, not turn the table on my friend, but turn the table the other way around. You know, next to me is a very distinguished member, you know, an IBM fellow, and a very nice fellow, by the way, C. Mohan. Mohan, here's what I see. Richard talked about the issue of trust, and I agree with him that confidence in the systems are very important for citizens, right? Now, you are a database expert. You've done a lot of work in blockchain. We are kind of just barely figuring out how to deal with networks, and now we're having, you know, cloud, we're having mobility, we're figuring out mobility, we're talking about IoT, we're figuring out IoT, we're dealing with blockchain. That's so much that we have to capture. And yet, we are dealing with the basics of teaching citizens what is a VPN, what is secure and not secure communication, what is an app, or what is cyber hygiene. Now, from being a database expert, right, do you think blockchain has got any form of solution in creating a better ecosystem? Maybe you can share some of your examples of KYC, for example, within IBM.
Yes, Jay. Good afternoon, everybody. I thought first, before I get into that topic specifically, I'll say a few words about my company, because IBM has been around for more than 100 years, and it's a, you know, a company that spans all the way from hardware to software to applications and services and so on, cloud and such. So over the decades, we've been working on many different topics in the context of security, from antivirus software being developed to even acquiring this company, Internet Security Systems, I think, ISS, right? We have done research work on this topic, and also produce products and even hardware support, for example, for encryption and such things. So as a manufacturer of products and as well as services and applications, packages and such, IBM is doing its part to, you know, educate the public and also produce features in our products that will make it harder for them to be hacked and things like that. So there's a whole range of things that one could talk about in that context. But as far as my own work is concerned, being a database guy, as Jay said, for a long time, we have had, of course, in the database systems, various features that are intended to improve the ability to give very granular kind of access control, and even features like encryption and such, hardware support for encryption. And more recently, some of you might be aware of what Intel calls the Secure Execution Enclave, SGX. IBM mainframes have had that for quite a long time, with lots of fancier features than what Intel is able to support in terms of amount of data or the execution logic itself being protected from being tampered with. Some of which, by the way, is being leveraged in the context now of even blockchain. For example, IBM has a blockchain as a service offering using the open source software that's being produced by IBM and its partners, the Hyperledger Fabric, which in its service offering version is run on the mainframe running Linux, where they leverage the hardware features that isolate the code and the data that's being messed around with using the blockchain way of doing asset management. So there are more things that are possible there, and not everybody is able to do this kind of leveraging of the hardware, because not all the hardware has it or the operating system supports it. But in the context of use case scenarios, there are many applications being worked on now, from food safety to know your customer kinds of situations, where by making use of the blockchain and in a more structured fashion, doing multi-party transactions and having an audit trail of what happened when, by whom, who agreed to what, and so on, we can tamper-proof the old way of doing business, where people in the business process management space or workflow management space, where there are lots of point-to-point kind of communication going on. When, let's say, you're shipping something from one country to another, there are so many different organizations involved. Forwarding agents to the shipping company, to the sender, to the receiver, and authorities like the customs guys and so on. And it might happen through multiple countries. You might send something from India to, let's say, Georgia, and it goes through Dubai because we are using Emirates Airlines. This is actually a use case that's being worked on. So for many of these sorts of things, we could do the job of tracking the movement of goods and such. Even diamonds are being managed now in a production way using a blockchain platform. There's a startup called Everledger that uses the Hyperledger fabric. So there are many such things that are being done, but that's not dealing with the kinds of situations that Arvind is talking about, where the common man on the street, and by the way, we might think we are sophisticated people, like what Jay was saying. We all are always just installing the new version of the app without even reading what the heck it's saying or the permissions that it wants you to give. So it's not like just because we wear the clothes we wear or we sit in such forums, we are any more sophisticated than the Joe Blow guy on the street that's using his cell phone. So there is a lot more that could be done, and the burden is, as Jeanne said, something that needs to be shared across the different parties that are there. And yeah, there are various technologies, but it's again a question of how easy to use they are, and how much of the burden is placed on the user versus the party that's providing the functionality, whether they make it easier for them to be used, and the language issues, and so many different things actually. For the most part, I come from Silicon Valley, where I've spent 3+ decades. All the fancy things everybody talks about, almost all of it is, at least at the beginning, exclusively in English. As an afterthought, then they think about European languages and such. And now, of course, China, on the other hand, has gone the other way, right? I go to China regularly, and it's so hard to deal with the software that they produce, even though they have tons of usage. So little English versions of any of the things, for using WeChat to anything else, Baidu and so on. And so at least they have a huge population with mostly a single language, so they have the benefit of that. Whereas in India, we don't have that benefit with so many languages. Like was mentioned, 22 official languages.
So thank you. So I want to come to Arvind. Now let's make this a little bit more interesting. So Arvind, here's my point, right? ECCouncil has a foundation, a not-for-profit. I want to share with you some experience that we had. And a couple of years ago, we wrote to a government, I will not mention which one, and we said we want to donate $1 million worth of educational products and services to help raise the security awareness of the K-12 population in the country. We got a rude shock when we found out that actually many governments don't accept so-called contributions, donations, because there are many laws within these countries. Now the point is this: we are trying to digitize. I'm not talking of just Digital India, right? This is a global platform, so we're talking about a global scale. But let's use India as an example, right? And a very good one. You will see that the movement towards a digitization in India is very rapid. But I would put it to you that, in my opinion, the only way for us to inculcate cyber behavior is that we will need to make this part of a daily routine. And one easy way of making it as part of daily routine is to have mandatory curricula right at the primary level. If we are teaching children civic mindedness, we need to teach basics of cybersecurity and cyber health right when they're 7 years old. Because guess what? They're already on their parents' phones anyway. I know of at least 100 kids who are below the age of 12 are children on Facebook, right? But what they do is they manipulate the age, right? Because it's cool if I have a Facebook app, right? And there's nothing anyone can do about this. So what's your thought, Arvind, from being a pioneer in this area?
First, let me comment as a parent of an under 12-year-old kid, okay? That is parents' problem, that they have created their parents to, their children to start using Facebook or any app for that matter, which they're not authorized to use. So that's bad behavior on part of parents. That's at least my view as a parent. Secondly,
powerful parent.
No, I'm very clear about that, because we cannot. Because if you start doing that, then you are responsible for that. So I'll make a couple of very interesting comments. I used to be in Silicon Valley for many, many years. And I think the point that you raised, and Dr. Mohan raised, is that I think we live in a world today where there is a lot of innovation coming from the Valley. There's a lot of innovation coming from China. And between the two, they're probably handling 1 billion people from Silicon Valley, different platforms, and 1 billion people coming from the Chinese platforms. I think there is another 5 billion plus out there, which which speak many other languages, which have different purchasing powers. It's a very different world. And of course, a very different growth potential. So why I bring that into picture is because you raised a point of $100 million worth of free. Not everything that is free is good, first of all. Two, and I don't know the specifics of it, but I'm in general saying that. Two, and that's how malware gets into your computers, right? I mean, there is a lot of free stuff that we do. And we download that and we keep saying yes to those things and we don't know what we're doing. Two is, I think, you know, literacy, again, we talked about a lot. We make it so, you know, I don't see, even if when I'm doing a download of a simple application, I don't see a, you know, a visual checkpoint of 5 things. You know, this is what we will read, this is what we will not read of you. It's embedded into tons and tons of terms and legalese that, as you said, none of us in this room, I think you should do a poll in this room, how many of us has read any terms of service of anything that we use, including me. I will say no to it. And then we get hooked on to it, and then, you know, it's very difficult to come out of that behavior. The third thing, Dr. Mohan was talking about, you know, blockchain, and I want to bring my technical hat on it. I think there is a time that we should look at technologies like blockchain to put verified code into our computers. I mean, blockchain can be a great technology where we can, you know, from a trust perspective, use a small blockchain into and anybody who's checking in code into a system, a platform, you can verify that code, because today that is the biggest issue. Malware creeps in from wherever. So I'm sure security companies and IBMs, and they are working on those things too.
I meant to mention one of the use cases, and I forgot to do that. There are now use case scenarios being worked on, especially with respect to the software that runs in your car. Automotive companies are interested with respect to updating the software that's in your car over the air. They want to make use of blockchain as a way of trying to ensure that it's not some fictitious thing or some
only verified code gets in.
So we just, it's from the legitimate person that is the manufacturer or whoever, or somebody who supplies it to the manufacturer, part supplier or whoever is the one that makes that software, makes the hardware that uses that software. So these are still emerging, though. I mean,
absolutely.
No, I just IoT to context also.
I just wanted to bring that. But there is a 2 aspects that I want to. Somebody just shared with this data with me early in the morning. And Jay, you know, we're talking about a global context, but we all know what is a Nigeria 419 scam. And why I bring that into picture is, how many of you know what is Nigeria 419 scam?
How many of you have been part of it?
That is a problem. That is a victim shaming. That is a part of the problem. Very frankly.
They deliberately choose people. They deliberately word their scams naively because they don't want to tackle sophisticated people. They want to go to the naive people and make easy money. So by definition, many of the people they take are the people that lack awareness, because this scam has been going on for years.
And thank you for bringing this. This is a worldwide scam. It happens everywhere in the world. But guess in the last 2 years, which is the highest growth area for them? India. With digitization, that is bound to happen. 40 million cases, 38 million unreported. There's huge scale. So countries, when they are going digitization, right? I mean, they're leapfrogging. These kind of issues, this naivety, this unknowingness becomes a big problem, and the systems are not in place. And then the victim shaming also happens, because it's such a, you got scammed, and because of that victim shaming, nobody comes forward and reports it. And the law enforcement is not ready, because they don't know what this is. So it's a classic case where, you know, because this session is all about what are the best practices. How do you make...
Arvind, can I ask you a question there? Just make it interesting. How do you deal with this? If I were to populate this news that a population was scammed, you call that victim shaming. If I don't populate, then no one knows there's such a scam. How do I do a balance?
It's reporting. See, there is a big balance between the two. The balance, and I'm not saying your specific thing. What I'm trying to say is what happens is people are afraid to come forward and say they got scammed by this manipulative scheme where it was get rich overnight scheme, right? That is the problem. It's a cyber issue, but people don't want to come and claim, come and even report that. So
it's not only by the ordinary people, right? Even the big companies like Equifax and Yahoo and so on, they delayed reporting getting hacked for many months and such, right? Even for Facebook, for example, the information that came out about the advertisements by the Eastern European guys trying to...
Today we have Uber's case, I mean...
exactly. My point is, the shaming thing is not just for the naive people, even the sophisticated companies, because they don't want to get bad publicity.
We'll come to you. Just one second. Jeanne, I know that you're thousands of miles away from us, and I don't want you to think that you're being ignored. You are a CTO of City of Los Angeles. I want to hear your perspective.
So I think that this is a really important issue to understand that people come to cybersecurity in all kinds of different levels of readiness. And so we have an issue in Los Angeles where we have some large hacks that have gone on against our entertainment companies like Sony Pictures. And we didn't really step in as a city government, but what we realized is that we actually block about 200 million cyber intrusion attempts a day. And we learn a lot from that, of course, which increases our cybersecurity. But there's things we can share with the public. And so just last month, we launched a cyber lab that shares our results of what the current threats are, what we're seeing as different patterns of behavior, basic ideas around cybersecurity. And we've shared that now with 300 of our local businesses. A lot of those are small or medium-sized businesses, so maybe just a few employees to 100 employees. But the point is we have a forum now where people can ask very basic questions in a non-judgmental way that lets them learn from what we're seeing, gives them some support, although we don't say we're going to protect them against everything. We help and make sure that they have access to learning from our local universities and online classes, as well as the ability to understand what our current threats are.
Thank you. I want to go quickly. By the way, to the audience, we will come to you. There's at the end of it, I've reserved 15 minutes, and we're going to have a very passionate discussion on this matter. Achal, I want to come to you. If you can share with us, Facebook, right? Now you have been a very charismatic leader in your own right, in cybersecurity. Can you talk to us a little bit about some best practices that we can take away, or what you do in Facebook? You lead a very innovative team, dealing with a tremendous amount of attacks. Can you share some lessons of cybersecurity from an employee standpoint? We've talked a lot about a netizen being a common person on the street. What about the employee of a large corporation, especially one like Facebook?
I think that's a very important question, and sometimes we fail to focus on it. Like we will do all user education, and sometimes we forget our employees. Or we tend to do it more for compliance. Like we'll put a security training out for our employees and say, hey, take this training course for an hour, answer 10 quiz questions at the end, and you are all set. And the questions will be like, what is phishing? What is social engineering? People who have heard the training can answer it, and then a week later, they have no clue what that was. So at Facebook, actually, we take a slightly different approach. We don't focus on any online, particularly like an hour training. We dedicate an entire month for it. So October is celebrated as a National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So that's the month we internally celebrate as Hacktober. And so Hacktober, why we call it Hacktober? Because everybody at our company knows that this is the month when our own security team is going to hack us. And we go and announce on the very first day, we will put a post out, guys, October is here, be prepared. And what does it mean? It means we will do various things, like we'll try to phish our own employees. We'll send them phishing emails. We will try to send them non-legit second factor auth notifications. We will leave USB keys with malware around the campus. And what we are looking for is, are you going to identify the threat and are you going to report it to us, or are you going to fall for it? So if we see that, okay, they are reporting to us, we award them with some swag, nothing financial, but they really take pride in it. Like they engage with us and they're like, wow, this is so good. Beyond this, we run like capture the flag events with our employees, and we run 2 versions of it. One is for technical people, which is more code-based, and one is for our non-technical folks, which will be more quiz-based. And then winners get some awards there as well. We run lock-picking sessions because we want them to understand that when we are locking our houses, we are always very well aware what kind of lock I should be using. Is my house locked properly or not? And when we are building security products, or when we are building any products, we are sometimes not even thinking about security. And that has to be on our DNA to always look at security and not security as a second thought. So running this program, we have been running it for 7 years. And we have got a tremendous amount of engagement. So I'll encourage, like, this is something if you want to train your employees to look out for, or be more security savvy and build security by design in their products, do something like this, which will stick with them, and they understand what security means.
Right, thank you, Achal. So I want to bring the attention of the audience to a very important quote that I got yesterday from the Honorable Law Minister of India, Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad. And he said, privacy cannot be the shield of the corrupt, terrorist, and extremist. And I think I completely agree with that statement. I want to get to Richard, right? And I want to talk to you a little bit about privacy. How do you really balance legitimate expectations of privacy versus cybersecurity? Because when you try to be extremely private, you are at some point compromising security, right? And vice versa. So can you share a little bit of your experience from a Vodafone perspective of how do you balance that?
So I think one of the key words of this session for me is about balance and understanding and transparency. So I think there is a real challenge here between the legitimate expectations of citizens to be kept safe by their governments and the requirements of technology companies. If you're a licensed company like Vodafone, in the countries in which we operate, we have legal obligations to assist governments. And indeed, if you're a socially responsible company, you're always going to behave in accordance with the law as we do. And therefore, you've got those dual functions. You've got your customers who have a legitimate expectation of privacy, and you've got the state, which has a legitimate expectation of legally based cooperation in terms of helping with with law enforcement assistance and those sorts of things. And I think it is important that, I mean, we mentioned the scale of the fraud, Jay. You mentioned the scale of the fraud that we see, but there is the business of ransoming. There's the business of child exploitation online. There's the business of using encrypted and sort of geographically isolated services in order to communicate between groups. There's the radicalization that can go on online. So I think part of the thing here is to be really open about the enormous excitement that the internet and the connectivity brings, but also to be really open and honest about the risks that are there as well. And the only way, and there is no simple answer, and I think the encryption debate is a really good example of the not being a simple and single answer. So, encryption is certainly part of the solution as far as Vodafone is concerned in terms of protecting data at rest and making sure that the transit of data with customer identifying information, etc. That's one of the things that we see as a tool that helps here. But also we need to recognize that on occasion encryption is used by the adversaries, either people trying to attack us or indeed those who wish society harm, to organize themselves and and do damage to us. So I think that's the dilemma, and I think for me the only way to sort of get to a position where you can begin to have a durable solution is the quality of the conversation that goes on between governments, the companies like ours that move this stuff about, and society. And when I say this, often people sort of roll their eyes and go, yeah, nice idea, how do you do that? To which I would reply is, if we don't do that, I haven't got a better idea, folks. I mean, because ultimately, this is about government's legitimate right and indeed expectation of society and citizens to be defended by their governments against at the moment against, which I think tells you all you need to know about the state of the current debate, against this idea that privacy is a sacrosanct thing, and the two things are on the distant sides of a divide, and one can't be right without the other. And my view is that actually, as with many of these things, and politics is a complicated business, but my view is that with many of these things, the only way you get between what it is that citizens feel they want in the privacy space and what it is that citizens want from their governments in terms of protection is by having an open and honest conversation about it. And as one of those companies that sits in the middle of this and gets flack from both sides, what we want is stable and well-considered law. We want an open and honest conversation on both sides of that. And we want recognition that this is a difficult issue that we need to wrestle with. We will be transparent if we can. We have a digital rights and freedoms report which Vodafone publishes with a law enforcement disclosure annex to it, where we go into detail about what it is we do in the countries in which we work. Now, there are some countries where we can't go into much detail, but we tell you what we can tell you and we tell you where we can't. And that, for me, is trying to get a sense of proportion around it, a sense of size around the debate so you understand it, but also recognizing that legal obligations are legal obligations and we will fulfill them because we're a company that obeys the law on the one hand, but also recognizing that we have a concern and we share the desire for an honest and open debate with government about what they need, because we think that's the only way we can really move forward.
Thank you. So I'm going to go for a rapid fire round. I'm going to ask all panelists with just one single question. Give you 30 seconds to answer because we want to engage the audience. The question is this. You woke up one morning and you realize that you're now the Secretary of Cybersecurity of a nation, right? And of a nation, right? Of an imaginary nation called La La Land. And you have to provide the Prime Minister with one single idea, just one, right? On how can you bring cyber hygiene to La La Land, right? While you think of that question, organizers, are you ready with the mics? Because next session we're going to get on with the audience. So those of you that wants to ask questions, think of your question, get ready. We will start with Facebook.
Perfect, thank you, Jay. I'll be looking more at the future and I'll say, what do we have enough cybersecurity expertise available to us in future? Because I'm really worried about that.
Okay, thank you. Richard?
I'm going to cheat and say education as my one word. That incorporates both the specialists who want to join in the cybersecurity, but also our citizens who need to use it.
Okay, Dorit?
I'm very much in favor of education, but in practice we need technology to help you be secure, and I think you could be secure if you deploy these technologies.
Dr. Mohan?
Oh, wow. I would say, put more of the burden on the manufacturers of whatever, hardware, software, and so on, and penalize them, I would say, if they are intentionally hiding certain things that they should have communicated to the public and using languages that, or even graphics and so on, that the general population can understand.
Number one, basically bundle some kind of a security into the enforce a bundling of a software product into the instruments. Two, go all out and do the one at each household level. Do an education one at each household level. Divide and conquer. Get one person each in household trained on cyber issues.
Thank you. So you heard it from the panel. Obviously, as an educator, I would say that education, but I will say compulsory education, starting from the primary level itself. Because if you want to inculcate cyber hygiene, it's my opinion that you will have to make it as a daily step as early as possible to become second nature. So I want to start with that gentleman who was the first here. Okay. Yes.
Hi. Hi. This is Jeanne.
Oh, Jeanne. No, I'm sorry, Jeanne. Don't shoot me. Right? I'm so sorry. 1 second. Out of sight is not out of mind, Jeanne. Yeah. Please.
That's okay. So I love the idea of education because I think that is really critical because awareness is the fundamental key to security. But I would also just want to introduce the idea of using artificial intelligence to be able to understand when nefarious behaviors are happening and to be able to help people who are coming in again with all different levels of naivete around cybersecurity and be able to go out and enforce the cyber hygiene ideas that we have.
All right, thank you, Jeanne. Thank you. All right, let's have a question, guys. So just, we want to take as many questions as we can. Try to keep your questions short, to the point. If possible, point out to any one of the moderators or anyone.
Yeah, I'm from law enforcement in India. I'll just make 3 points in 2 minutes, quickly. One is we are here in a wonderful gathering about talking about international cooperation about cyber security. In our own country, we have policing, which is the main agency to tackle the cyber crime. I'm part of that. We have this policing as a state subject. And somebody cheating sitting in Haryana or Jharkhand, cheating somebody in Andhra Pradesh and cheating Bombay, we know how difficult it is to get the cooperation. When we talk about NIA at Delhi, which looks after the national level crimes, can't we think of something like a national security, cyber security thing which can investigate cases like that which we are not able to investigate anywhere, number one. Number two, banks all over the country, all over the world, they are saving huge money by use of ATM. If you open an account without asking you, they give you an ATM. They won't ask you whether you need an ATM or not. They are giving ATMs to villages, people in rural areas, and those people are getting cheated because they don't know how to use the ATM. How to save the CVV. People are getting cheated. Are the bank not vicariously liable for the money people are getting looted and cheated all across the country? And there are millions of people like that, let me tell you. Thirdly, when we talk about CSR activities of the industries and all, can't we think of some CSR activities from the e-commerce also? Because they are making huge money and they are bound to, they should pay and they invest in e-education for the education of the people. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So no questions there. Can we move to this side? So I'm fair, right? So I'm going to go left, right, and I'll come to the center. Can we pick someone from the first? Okay, here you go, gentlemen. Yes,
hi.
Okay.
I just pick up.
And just 1 second. Can we get another person from this ready with the mic so we save time, right? Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I pick up your statement about La La Land. My question is that La La Land, if it was not one country, but if it was representing the whole world, because the problem we are talking about here is so many components, the private corporations, the governments, etc. But do you think whatever has been discussed, sure, we identified the problem, impact of da-da-da, but really speaking, what is that solution that is really implementable and at what level? Because if that La La Land was representing the whole earth, we have seen United Nations have failed. Do you think something of this nature can be handled? Probably you could do 1 minute, again, rapid fire on that question. If La La Land was the world, what would you do?
So I'll tell you, La La Land is the world. The truth is, it is the world.
So where's the Prime Minister of that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
Dorit,
go
but
ahead.
that gentleman has already said even within India, across states, there are differences, and that's a nuisance anyway.
There are big differences, unfortunately, and it's not one world. And one of the things you have to realize is that some people have the desire that things would be attackable because they are using it as their engine. So there are certain countries in which different things are acceptable in different ways than in other countries. And if La La Land was the whole world, is nice, but we are not going to live without enemies. So we could say the same about planes, and we would not have to take our shoes in airports off and stuff. But the world has some bad stuff in it. And so we do have to look at it in a realized way that there are multiple policies and there is no one truth that gathers all. And in some places, the attackers are state sponsors or spin-offs of state sponsors.
Yeah, can we have someone, and yeah, can we have a lady right here from the center row, please, if you don't mind? Yeah. We practice equality.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Pooja, and I do internet safety workshops in schools, and I've also written a book called Be Safe in Cyberspace for Children. Now, my question is, Sir said that a lot of children who are not 12 yet, and they're already active on Facebook, and at the same time, let's not forget that there are pedophiles out there who pretending to be someone they are not. I keep getting cases wherein fake identity has been used, fake Facebook profiles have been created. So my concern here as a mother and as a cyber safety educator is, can't Facebook and other social media platforms have some kind of an identity verification process? I go there to open a bank account, I'm supposed to prove my identity. Before opening a Facebook account, nothing. So can we have something in place so that as users, as parents, we feel safer and we know who is there behind that virtual wall?
I think Facebook, when I think about, I'm a mom myself. I have a 16-year-old boy, and when I was hearing Arvind respond to it, like, oh, I'm a responsible parent, I watch what my kids do. So yes, that aspect is there as well. We take authenticity of our platform really seriously. And fake accounts or people coming up or impersonating something, that's not something we like on our platform. So we have systems running in the background where we do pattern detection. And we will identify based upon the behavior that these are the fake accounts. And we immediately bring those down, like we close those accounts. So it may look at the surface that, yes, this is a problem, but we are definitely very actively working on it. And we are continuously reviewing our algorithms as well. We are making sure that our algorithms are up to the mark and we are staying ahead of our attackers. So we want to keep our users safe. That's our primary goal.
So I'd just like to add with that, I think a lot of the responsibility is also of us, the users, because, I mean, because Archil is here, we're talking Facebook, but to be fair, that question applies to Instagram, applies to Twitter, applies to all other social networks. So I think the more the community raises this and makes it the voice and using social media, then you're going to get attention of all of the other software companies who, who may not be paying the attention that others do. All right, we want to reverse the question.
No, it's a simple thing. It's a question of anonymity also. The moment you attach KYC to whether it's Facebook, and I'm not speaking on behalf of Facebook, but any other thing, do you lose anonymity? Do you become a surveillance state? Who surveils you? And that La La Land becomes really the big brother. So I think there are some issues, but your suggestion is a good suggestion, but there are certain issues to be tackled before you can do certain things like that.
In fact, there is a related thing in the blockchain space. Open blockchains versus private blockchains. Open blockchain has the same problem, where any joker anywhere without revealing their identity can join the fray and do all sorts of silly stuff. So private blockchain is actually what I've been, pushing on, and various people who are really thinking of going beyond just Bitcoin and such silly things are working on. And so it is something that needs to be worried about. I mean, obviously you need to prioritize between anonymity versus what's good and safe and so on. Yeah.
If you don't mind, let's have a private discussion. Let's give others a chance. Can we go quickly to the gentleman in the front row? After this, I'm going to be going to the back, right, to give everybody an equal chance. So can we have this gentleman a mic, please, real quickly, from this side? And then I'm coming to the back on the other side, right, so we give everyone a chance. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Santosh Talagatti. I'm an educationist. I have trained more than 10,000 school teachers. And in my opinion, making security as a compulsory subject is not going to work, because again, they will go on by halting which question, what is cybersecurity, advantages, importance, factors affecting that and this. And the whole life will go in answering the questions, and the real life will remain aside. So instead of making it as a compulsory subject, since it is an ethical value, means for speaking truth, and you not have to give the examination. It's an ethical part of the entire life and world. So we need to bring altogether different practice beyond the curriculum, because the moment you bring in curriculum, it is a failed subject. Though they will get a rank, but that same man, one who is getting 100 out of 100, would be a great crime in reality. So I would suggest, instead of making it as a curriculum subject, it should be an ethical part of the entire existence, since it is a digital world. The second part is, more than an education, we need not, the time has come, education is not enough, security is more than education. For example, many children I have seen, and even women, and even as a human, we are not secured on the cyber world. So we need to provide not only educators, but also the security experts and also police. cyber police for certain regions. So if we bring cyber police, because the moment I am facing the problem, I have a threat, I should have cyber police on Facebook, I should have there should be some websites where I can easily get in and say that I am facing a problem. So if we could bring such practices, what is your opinion?
Good points that you have raised very quickly. I mean, cyber police, you're talking about budgets, national budgets. You talk about not being a curricula, very noble thought. The problem is, well, take a look at what's happening now. It's not part of the curricula. Nothing is happening. It's not getting in. So you have to start somewhere. Is at least my
basically
opinion.
saying put it in moral science, this ethics and all that.
Right. Okay, can we go to the group at the back? Yes, Mike. Oh yes, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll just take this question real quick.
Sir,
yes.
When I feel as a netizen, when I feel very secured, what is the point of time when I should feel that apart from being secure, I am under surveillance also? Is there any point where I can realize or recognize that my security is going beyond the limit of security and it is entering a domain of surveillance?
So I will just make one line and I'll open it up to the panel. As a lawyer, because I'm legally trained, my question is, are you an American or not an American first? Because there are constitutional differences depending on whether you are a US citizen or not. In the US, your privacy is enshrined in the Constitution. And in most international countries outside, it's not. So when you're an international citizen, I'm a Malaysian by birth, right? I mean, to me, when I grew up and if I had surveillance, it's not, it's not something that's completely repugnant. It's something that I can accept. I would say, oh yeah, okay, all right, the state's monitoring me. Not something I like, but I'm not going to be detested, right? But if I'm an American, right, maybe Achal, you may be the best person to speak about it. You're going to go dead against it and say that absolutely not, it's against my constitution. But I'll open it up to the panelists to comment.
Yeah, I think that there aren't any black and white answers. There aren't any, it's going to be only police. There aren't going to be, it's only education. There isn't going to be either privacy or security. As Richard mentioned, it's all a balance. Because in order to do some of the AI we spoke about before, I need some identity, or I'll give lesser of information, because in the Israeli airport system, you're doing profiling, and some people get hit in profiling and get scanned more, and it's sometimes unpleasant. So the US sometimes don't do profiling, and is it better? Does it give them better security? Maybe with profiling they would have saved some of the things they've done. So there is a balance. You can't always do profiling, and not always the same population can suffer, but you have to do some level of profiling. So I can decide what are the characteristics that I need to know about you, and I need to trace them. But if I know nothing about you, then I can also don't provide security, and maybe you are a robot that comes to scam her kids, and this is all bad stuff. So there is a balance.
Jeanne, you're far away from us. I want to give you the opportunity to say something, especially with regards to privacy from an American context. Would you like to comment to that?
Sure, I would. Thank you so much. So yeah, I think it's really important to understand that that as the previous speaker said, there's a balance. And so if we only focus on education, then it means that very sophisticated users who mean harm are going to be able to continue to have problems and be able to take advantage of people. But if we don't educate people, then we're missing the main point, which is to try to increase awareness and make sure that not only do we have technical barriers, but we also have social barriers, because people get smart about being immune to cybercrime. On the other hand, though, I think that this idea of having artificial intelligence is really critical, because we want to be able to, whether we're profiling a person or profiling a type of behavior, we want to make sure that if we see repeated attacks against, a certain system or certain kinds of attacks that get reported, that we are able to respond to those. So I don't know if it's the cyber police. We call them Chief Information Security Officers here in the States. But the idea is to be able to include that in criminal behavior when there are victims of that, which could be children who are victimized by bullying or by people preying on them. And it could also be people who are elderly citizens who are victims of financial fraud when they become prey to cybersecurity issues. So I think the idea is we want to protect the individual's privacy as much as possible from an American perspective, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that we allow criminals to behave on the public streets in a bad way, and so we certainly don't allow them to behave on our virtual streets in a bad way.
Thank you, Jeanne. So we're almost out of time. We have time for 2 questions. I'm going to take one question online. Can I have the moderator? There is an online question from a Mr. Rajani that I saw. Can we see if there's a question that's coming up? In the meantime, I'll take a question from the hall. Yeah, right in front, and I'll come to you, sir, right after this. Yes.
Thanks. I work for Access Now. We've been working with civil society, which I'm sorry to see has not been included on the stage. I think we do have a lot to contribute to this conversation, especially because we see the attacks against frontline human rights defenders. We see the attacks often before they hit the consumers and the masses. And in this way, we work closely with Facebook and other companies to alert them to flaws in their systems, whether it's technical flaws or process flaws. And it's an essential role that we play, essentially asserting the fundamental human right to privacy online, which as a human rights lawyer, I'm happy to say has been recognized in India as it has at the United Nations. This is a fundamental right that all citizens of the world, all peoples of the world enjoy. It doesn't need to be granted or affirmed by any 200-year-old, 50-year-old, 10-year-old document to apply. This fundamental right is not something that should be balanced away. We reject that framing, and I think through our work we see that actually work and in tools and technologies that enhance privacy, like strong encryption, actually reinforce the security of the state, not only in a narrow sense of keeping people free from fraud and discrimination and keeping access to information flowing freely as Tor and other online anonymous networks allow, but privacy is also fundamental to democratic societies by allowing individuals and groups to take in knowledge, process it, reach out, build community without the watchful eye of the state or other actors that can't always be trusted. So I just want this viewpoint to be recommended, and strangely for civil society, I'm going to say, where are the laws and why have we not talked about rule of law in this?
Thank you very much. All right, we really are out of time. That's the last question right there, and then we'll engage further. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I am Dr. Prashun.
Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
I am Dr. Prashun Gupta and representing law enforcement agencies. Can you put it closer, please? I am Dr. Prashun Gupta and I am representing law enforcement agencies of the country, and we are participating in the policy making related to cybercrime. My question is that in one of the very important meetings and discussions, we found that people that our group or our setup is representing that the corporate is not opening up for sharing the information with us. Like there is a lot of challenge between the law enforcement agencies and the people like WhatsApp or Facebook or Twitter, and we don't have a proper, there are proper nodal officer deputed, but the response time is quite high, and it's a high level challenge, and it has been represented by so many people. So I must recommend that this should come as a part of recommendation in this very conference, because it's a global conference. And I think most of the countries must be facing the same thing. And another thing is that the response time for Indian law enforcement agencies by these corporates should be quite fast. That is one thing.
Thank you very much. I think we are really out of time. Do we have the online question, the only online question that we had? Was there? No? You didn't get it? All right. Here's the boss.
Thanks, Natan. My name is Om Narayan. I'm looking at a data of global usage on Facebook on the videos which are being viewed. And the pattern is like this: food at the top, and followed by fashion and beauty, animals, and do it yourself. And what we are talking about here, education goes to the lowest bottom on the 5th position, then car and finance. The globe is talking about today about enhancing the registration ratio of students in colleges. And as nation as well as globe, we are struggling to have good registrations in colleges. Now, here is the challenge I'm putting forth to the esteemed panel. This is the situation across the globe, and in that condition, while we are looking at cyber being the bridge between the divide, how do we ensure that the education we were talking about in the means of video or interaction happens? I mean, incidentally, if I search something on Google or Amazon, the advertisements come on my Facebook account. I mean, that level of data reading happens, but nothing comes out information from the perspective of my own education from security standpoint, or further on about my knowledge perspective. Thank you.
Would any one of you want to take Achal? Okay.
Yeah, I think when I'm thinking about education, and I briefly talked about what we are doing to educate our employee base, we have similar tools available for our users on our website for security education. Like there is a security checkpoint that users can invoke, and they can do a check on their account to see which security tools they are using right now, which they can enable on their account to further protect their account. Similarly, we have like privacy checkpoints. So people can really go and leverage some of these tools, and that will enhance definitely their understanding of security.
All right, thank you very much. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. We're completely out of time. I'd like to thank all of the panelists and hand this back to Karthik.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Just one quick question to the panel. The issue is that, I mean, we understand that probably education and generating awareness is definitely the most important part over here. The question is that, do you think introducing checks like Anchal was talking about, you know, dual authentication and also other kind of checks could make a difference as far as security is concerned? But that apart, I would request you to please summarize 5 points which you think would help in evolving best practices for the netizens. You know, just to summarize, you know, maybe educating, maybe generating awareness in a family at the lowest level, the lowest unit of a country.
Gaming.
And, you know, how do we do that?
Gaming.
The rapid fire question actually answered that question, right? So you want a summary? Let's go again.
I think I still like, I feel like we should focus on how our cybersecurity experts availability is going to be in future. Like, do we have enough people available to be hired in these roles?
So professional education, okay, Richard?
I would say I think it is around the quality of the conversation. So the point made about the human rights view, the civil society view, the government view, the company view, I think all of those views have relevance here, and I think the trick is to try to arrive at a space where we get the maximum agreement and overlap that we can, not suggesting for a moment that it's easy, but I think that without that conversation, then we'll end up with with an imperfect system which will continue not necessarily to get better. So there's something here about consolidating the arguments and having them openly and transparently in a way that then I think leads to better decision making all around.
To controverse with Richard, I'd say we need to start from a point of view that attacks can be prevented. Otherwise, we give up at the get-go. And the other side is how we improve education is gaming. It's a great tool. I've seen it working in different places in Israel, and I have very good experience with it.
Jeanne, can we come to you?
Sure. So I think using data and analytics is also really important to understand the trends that we're seeing in these cyber attacks, to be able to better defend against them and to be able to find out better education techniques. So kind of looking at gamification, other things that may help people to learn more rapidly.
Mohan?
Yeah, one of the points that was made in another panel by Sriram of Microsoft is that we have gone from the time when we used to protect the information or the systems physically to now with the wide adoption of social media as well as using the cloud and such. And we are also giving out information, personally identifiable information and so on, so that problem has shifted to having more knowledge about how the information that's being given out would be used, and whether or not the people who are taking the information are going to misuse it and things like that. So it's a totally different space than just locking up things in your house and then thinking, oh, it's all safe. Because information is flowing the other way for various reasons, right? You're ordering goods, giving out your credit card information and so on. So it's even more compounded now than just the physical security kind of thing that people are worried about before. So the burden is more on even the, people who are providing the services, who are taking this information, having to reveal more of what they are going to do with the information that's being given out. You have HIPAA regulations in the US for healthcare related stuff, but the same sort of laws should come into force with respect to other things also.
Arvind?
30 seconds is the cybersecurity should be demystified to the latest person joining the internet. It should be as simple as that. Whether it's gamification, education, local language, make it more citizen-centric and easy for people to understand. And there is technology, and we use all the technology that can, that can be the engine behind it, but at the front end of it, we need to make it very simple.
I would say formalize that still as education. It doesn't have to be a 500-page textbook with ABCD answer. It can be gamification. It can be civic-mindedness. It could be cards. It could be, just like how you teach physical education. You can make it fun. But I think that if you do not bring structure to cyber education right from the bottom, right when they're young, then you're not going to be able to make this into a hygiene issue. So, and this is, and to answer the question of the gentleman, this is not a matter of one country. Yeah, we do live in a united world, but one world is only a Michael Jackson song. The truth is there are veto powers. The truth is there are politics. The truth is there are geographies. There are so many other competing challenges that even the UN faces. So it's not so easy, to be idealistic and say that, oh, okay, we are all one world, we are all happy, and let's unite. So I think every society will have to bring this up and bring this at the education level. With that, Karthik, we hand this back to you.
Thank you so much. I think it has been a very educative discussion, and I would like to give a word of thanks to the panelists, and I would like all the audience to join us by giving them a round of applause, please. Thank you so much. May I request the moderator and the technical director, NIC, MyGov, and Open Data to please come on the stage. Mr. DP Mishra. Anshul, if you don't mind, back on the stage, please. Thank you. Yeah, we would like to felicitate each one of you with a memento. And Jeanne, I would like to thank you, especially coming all the way. I mean, I know it's probably midnight over there.
Thank you so much for letting me participate.
Thank you so very much for joining up. I know you've been not well, you're not keeping well, and still you've taken out time to join us, please.
Namaste.
Jeanne, we shall be keeping the gift on your behalf, and we'll definitely get back to you on that.
Thank you.